You should be good to go.
All right, thanks, Christine. All right, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Sorry, let's try that again. Sorry about that. Good afternoon. My name is Taylor Bell, and today on our Nationwide Permit webinar series, we're going to talk about new field tools for the regulatory toolbox. This is presented by the district mitigation team. My name is Taylor Bell. I am a mitigation project manager with New England. Also on the line, we have Aaron Davis, who's a mitigation project manager, and Samuel Thompson. They'll be introducing themselves later, and for now, we're going to get going. If you could, type questions into the question bar or the chat bar, and we will answer them at the end or answer them in chat. Any verbal questions, please wait till the end. To start, we have one more upcoming webinar. The team will be back to talk about General Condition 23, mitigation, August 6th. The same link will be back. Next slide, please. Today, we're going to briefly discuss and talk about tools available in the regulatory toolbox, from the resource delineation bucket to the functional conditional assessment bucket. We'll be briefly talking about the Ordinary High Watermark Manual, the Northeast Stream Flow Duration Assessment Method, and the Aquatic Resources Delineation Reporting Standards. As far as functional conditional assessments, we're going to bring on the Stream Visual Assessment Protocol, discuss the New England Wetland Functional Assessment, and discuss the currently being developed Rapid Disturbance-Based Conditional Assessment. Next slide. What you're looking at here is the library of all of our assessments and all of our tools. This is where we can access each one of our manuals, each one of our stream tools that are currently available. NEWFA is currently, or the New England Wetland Functional Assessment, which I'll reference as NEWFA, and Aaron might too. It's still under draft, but this is where these tools live now. And so take a screenshot, write it down. If you want to access these tools, this is where they're located. And next slide. Going to start with the National Ordinary High Watermark Delineation Manual for Rivers and Streams, which was published in January 2025. Next slide. To start, what is the Ordinary High Water Mark? The Ordinary High Water Mark demarcates the lateral extent of federal jurisdiction for Section 10. It applies to traditional navigable waters, and more traditionally, Section 4.4 of the Clean Water Act, where you'll see it more actively used to identify streams and potentially other water bodies. There has been some use as part of lake identification, but the intent is to identify streams. What you're looking at in the bottom right, it has a screenshot of the floodplain, and what this Ordinary High Water Mark keys in on is the active channel, bankflow elevation, Ordinary High Water Mark, and then looking at the bottom left. When there is a high flow event, where does that ordinarily take place? Where does that line exist? And so we want to get out of the low and base flows, which are more actively seen out in the field, to potentially moderate flows. A lot of the easy indicators or knee-jerk indicators are at these low base and moderate flows. And so we're going to be looking at, high flows. Where does this ordinarily occur? And these are most of the indicators that are present within this manual. Next slide. Why do we need Ordinary High Water Mark Delineation Manual? In regulation, it discusses what exactly an Ordinary High Water Mark line is established by, or what it means. And physical characteristics such as clear, natural line impressed on the bank, shelving, changes in the soil, destruction of terrestrial habitat or vegetation, and the presence of litter and debris. This is defined in regulation. From the original regulation, there was guidance provided, and there's a regulatory guidance letter 0505. This guidance letter discusses the following items located there: racking, sediment sorting, the items you see when you field verify, that's in the guidance. And so from this guidance, there was the development of a technical manual. And so this technical manual standardized language for communication among scientists, regulators, and the public. It focuses on identifying characteristics of high flow rather than low flow, and it provides consistent ordinary high water mark identification despite differences in land use, season, or impacts from natural disturbances. Next slide. The goals of the National Manual is to provide consistent determination. How we're making decisions and how we're justifying decisions in the Northeast should be the same as the Southeast, should be the same as the Southwest. And so while these lines may change due to fluctuations in precipitation and variance and intensity, we should be able to document those the same method using the weight of evidence approach, which is the goal number 2. Decisions are made using weighted evidence. It's the summary or the accumulation of the evidence when you make one significant and you weigh out each item. And so the weight of one item will be able to verify lines. Also, a goal is to provide a form for rapid and consistent field data collection. Also be able to describe landscape scale considerations for interpretation and provide examples of what we can go to and say this is a similar stream, similar type landscape. And this is what we looked at here. These are similar indicators here. And so this manual accomplishes all these goals. Next slide, please. All right, summary of the process. Step 1, site overview and remote online resources. Look at everything aerial, check the weather conditions, check the precipitation. I think we might discuss a little bit the antecedent precipitation tool to see how wet or how dry we are compared to historical stats. Then there's the field assessment, site conditions description. Then you identify indicators. And so this is going on site and identifying shelving, debris. You're looking at each type of evidence that could point us in the direction of where the water line is when there are high flows. We consider additional information on site. We weigh the body of evidence on site to make a final determination for what we believe it is, or the ordinary high water mark is, for that matter. Next slide, please. So what are the benefits to using the manual? The data sheet provides decision-making process. This is our homework. And so this is showing the proof of how we make our decision. We didn't just go out there and make a decision that was appropriate for our decision, our permit, or for the client, your consultant. We need to be able to justify and document why we made that decision. That's what the data sheet and the field procedure does. It does both of these to support our determination. Next slide. Here is where the verdict and the National Manual and all the supporting documents have about the ordinary high water mark. Some of these take you straight to the site so you can print out your own. Some of these take you straight to a presentation online so you can get more background from Dr. Gabrielle David. One of the writers of the manual is on that SDS YouTube down there. And then the other supporting information with these other tech reports on the right, top right. And next slide. I'll pass it over to Sam.
Perfect. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Samuel Thompson, new mitigation project manager here with the New England District. The next tool we're going to go over and discuss is SDAM, which is the Regional Streamflow Duration Assessment Method, which is a joint development between the Army Corps of Engineers and the EPA, and it contains the manual and online application, as well as a regional supplement specific to the Northeast and Southeast region. Next slide, please. Perfect. So the SDAM purpose is to gain an idea and a preliminary determination on a stream's flow regime. In order to understand what that stream flow regime is, we need to understand what stream flow is. So stream flow is simply defined as the flow of water within a confined channel. Flow regimes are dictated by changes in the stream inputs, such as discharges from upstream sources, such as rainfall, runoff, groundwater influence, and any other upstream inputs, as well as the outputs, including the downstream discharge, groundwater percolation, and evapotranspiration. The balance of the inputs and outputs is what determines if the water present determines if water is present as the stream flow. There are many ways to characterize stream flow. However, SDAM focuses on the duration of the flow itself instead of a magnitude or timing of the flow. Stream flow duration exists in a continuum, which is widely split into 3 classes of perennial, intermittent, and ephemeral. So next slide, please. SDAMs is beneficial because we typically don't have a lot of long-term hydrologic data on the streams that we're evaluating under the regulatory program. While remote sensing can monitor over a large area and over a long period of time, many stream reaches are too small for the remote monitoring, or they just don't have active remote monitoring equipment or any information available on them. So SDAM is a rapid field-based method for classifying the flow duration of a stream. So SDAMs classifies again into these 3 main categories, which would be perennial, intermittent, and an ephemeral stream. SDAM data can support identifying waters which may be subject to regulatory jurisdiction under the Clean Water Act, and specifically waters that may be deemed relatively permanent, as well as other authorities. But SDAM results are not a sole jurisdictional determination. They're just a guide to steer you in the direction for your own professional judgment for a jurisdictional determination. So next slide, please. Perfect. So as a summary on how to conduct an SDAMS review, it starts with a desktop level review of the appropriate site conditions and the other typical resources that are in the area. We do need to determine the entire reach of the stream that we're going to be identifying and the boundaries that we are going to be looked at for where the project is going to occur. Next comes the field level review and taking the data sheet that's a part of the SDAMS review on site to assess the bankful width, the entrenchment, the biota, which would include macroinvertebrants in the system, slope, as well as the shading of the stream. This information is all recorded and documented on the data form and is conducted along multiple points along the entire reach of the stream. Then that information is brought back and another desktop evaluation is done utilizing other desktop indicators of the site, including finding the drainage area, which can be done through applications like StreamStats. We want to know if normal weather, typical weather patterns were occurring during the day of field collection. So we may use that antecedent precipitation tool, as well as we would want to know the site elevation. Then all this information is compiled within the SDAM online assessment tool, and the model is run to generate a preliminary flow regime of the stream. And just as another reminder, you will see this result. It is not a full jurisdictional determination. It's just to help guide your professional decision. Next slide, please. So why this information is useful to us is that SDAM provides timely stream flow duration information, which can be supporting data for aquatic resource jurisdictional determinations, particularly when determining if a water is deemed relatively permanent. Beyond its application as a new tool in the regulatory toolbox, SDAM classifications can inform ecological assessments and resource management decisions, such as setting restoration goals or applying appropriate water quality standards. Next slide, please. All right, and lastly, this slide shows you where you can find all the information discussed about SDAMs. Note here just that the information is housed on the EPA's websites, but they do have all the links to the web application, as well as the user manuals, field forms. All of that information is located on the websites on those links there. So perfect. Next slide, please. All right. And so the next thing I wanted to highlight are some additional resources. I know we were talking about jurisdictional determinations, and so I wanted to also highlight some resources produced from the Corps for aquatic resource delineation reports. So next slide. All right, so these documents were produced by the Corps. They include the recommended minimum standards for an aquatic resource delineation report and the recording aquatic resource determinations using global navigational satellite systems. The recommended minimum standards for aquatic resource delineation reports identifies what are the necessary elements that must be included within an aquatic resource delineation report to submit, whether you're submitting that for your pre-construction notification or for a approved jurisdictional determination. It also goes over quality standards for the collection of that data as well. This form is, the information is important now that with the implementation of nationwide permits, there are some permits that do require a full aquatic resource delineation to be conducted. And it is also a requirement when submitting a approved jurisdictional determination, as well as it may be required in order for your PCN submittal to be listed as federally complete. The recording aquatic resource determinations using global navigational satellite systems document provides recommendations for using high accuracy GNSS receivers and GIS resources to properly and accurately map your aquatic resource boundaries electronically. This information is helpful when collecting information necessary for your delineations and creating the most accurate data when drafting your project plans or submitting a delineation report to the Corps. And below is the link where you can find both of those resources able for you to take a look at. Highly recommend it. And next slide. Perfect. And I will pass it on over to Erin.
Good afternoon, Erin Davis, part of the district mitigation team as a project manager. While many of the field tools that we're talking about today are recent releases or upcoming releases, we also wanted to highlight a field tool that's been used in the district for a while, but may have renewed interest in application with the nationwide permit implementation. So SVAP, which is the Stream Visual Assessment Protocol, was developed by the USDA Natural Resources Conservation Service. SVAP version 2 manual was released in 2009 and provides a standardized rapid method for evaluating the ecological condition of a stream by scoring key elements like channel formation, bank stability, and riparian habitat, and it produces a qualitative snapshot and overall health score for the assessed stream reach. And throughout this presentation, I may be referring to SVAP rather than SVAP2, meaning SVAP2. So similar to the other field tools discussed, the SVAP process starts with a desktop review of the subject area and available online resources for a preliminary assessment of the stream's watershed. Then once in the field, the first step is to delineate the assessment reach, followed by scoring each SVAP element for the assessment reach. And as shown on the right, there's a total of 16 SVAP elements that include geomorphic, water quality, and biota characteristics. And since an element might not be applicable, such as salinity, or feasible to measure, such as the aquatic invertebrate community, the overall condition score is based on the sum of the element scores over the total number of elements assessed. And these scores are ranked or categorized from severely degraded to excellent stream reach condition. And while developed by NRCS, the New England District has adopted this assessment method for regulatory application to account for stream condition when we evaluate potential adverse effects and functional loss, as well as a means to demonstrate potential for functional gain and ecosystem improvement. The 2026 nationwide permits call out the use of assessment methods to support the no more than minimal district engineer determination. And the 2008 federal mitigation rule calls out the use of assessment methods in compensatory mitigation ratio determinations for impacts, as well as in credit generation determinations for mitigation banks and in LUFI projects. By including SVAP data in PCN or permit application submittals, it can help streamline the review process and help determine appropriate commensurate compensatory mitigation. The district's mitigation SOP tables C3 and C4 outline recommended multipliers taking into account the SVAP assessed resource condition and the proposed impact activity. For example, a poor condition stream may have a lower mitigation ratio requirement compared to an excellent condition stream. And for mitigation projects, the district SOP table C5 outlines potential stream credit generation multipliers based on a stream condition, the current stream condition, and the proposed mitigation approach, such as preservation of good or excellent streams, or rehabilitation of poor or degraded stream segments. So the SVAP2 manual, which walks through how to delineate an assessment reach and how to score all of the SVAP elements, along with the New England specific data form dated 2018, are available on our district regulatory field tools website, as well as a technical review paper that is the basis for the regional updated data form. Okay. Moving on to our next tool. Very exciting news. At the end of last year, the New England District and EPA Region 1 started the rollout process of the New England Wetland Functional Assessment Method, referred to, as Taylor mentioned, NUFA. So the initial release is the draft user guide and data sheet. And in recent weeks, we started updating with appendices and supporting documents, all on that district regulatory field tools website. So I'm going to briefly walk through why this assessment is needed, the objectives, potential applications, and where we would like your feedback. So why do we need NUFA? Under the Clean Water Act, Section 404, permit applications require the review of the EPA 404B1 guidelines. These guidelines include making adverse effect determinations considering aquatic ecosystem functions and values. As a result, the district developed the highway methodology, which is a descriptive qualitative method for evaluating wetland functions and values for large projects requiring Section 404 permits, often highway projects. As mentioned earlier, the 2008 federal mitigation rule keys in on aquatic resource functional losses and gains and using quantitative assessment methods. So the district recognized that there was a need to update a wetland functional assessment method from qualitative to quantitative to identify and quantify the wetland functions to determine appropriate mitigation and credit generation under the mitigation rule. An interagency review team reviewed existing methods and concluded that there really wasn't anything that could be easily modified to meet our regulatory agency needs. So the district and EPA Region 1 set forth to develop NUFA. And the method objectives of NUFA were to develop a tool that assessed functional capacity of a wetland, be regional applicable across all 6 states of the district, scientifically supported, objective and repeatable, and user-friendly. The potential regulatory application of NUFA is anticipated to help with assessing large, complex projects, such as in the alternative analysis for an individual permit. It's also intended to be useful by the mitigation program in evaluating site suitability and functional gain credit generation for in-lieu fee projects and mitigation banks. NUFA is also available for use outside of the regulatory framework for other voluntary restoration projects and habitat monitoring by the public. NUFA in a nutshell. So as mentioned, NUFA is a quantitative method for assessing wetland function. It assesses the capacity of the wetland to perform individual functions. It does not assess wetland condition. NUFA has been established to assess 14 key wetland functions, 6 of them being hydrology-based, 5 water quality-based, and 3 biota supporting functions. There are 4 resource-specific functions that are only evaluated when relevant to the associated resource, so it's not applicable to all wetlands. And NUFA accounts for unique geomorphologic characteristics and climate of New England. So again, it's consistent across all 6 New England states. And ultimately, NUFA calculates functional capacity grades, FCGs, for each individual function. So it's not an additive score for a wetland, but each function gets a rating of low, medium, high, and then also a numeric functional score. And it helps to inform appropriate compensate mitigation ratios, as well as, again, generate performance standards for mitigation projects. And similar to other assessment and delineation field tool methods, the process starts by gathering site information, identifying boundaries, and then heading to the field to collect data. Once in the field, you can finalize those boundaries and then come back and complete your desktop information, including GIS data, to complete your data sheet, which then determines your variable scores that are used to calculate the functional capacity grades for each of the 14 wetland functions. And where you can learn more, so again, NUFA lives on the district website, our regulatory field tools webpage. If you go to the wetland tools drop-down, we have added several of the appendices that help provide supporting information and examples of different procedures and processes involved in NUFA. You'll also find a link to the public notice. This was released as a draft user guide and data sheet in order to provide the opportunity for the public and stakeholders to test it out, provide feedback, so that we can make improvements before finalizing. So we welcome comments submitted through the public notice portal, as well as we developed a specific NUFA feedback form, which asked targeted questions that were really interested for folks to head out into the field and work through the data sheet, work through the models, and provide us, critiques, recommendations, questions. So please visit the QR code to provide some, share your input. And we will be continuing to update as new information supporting documents are finalized. So keep visiting the page to learn more. And I'll note both on the SBAP and NUFA, these are non-mandatory technical resources for public use. So not required at this time, but available to help support permit determinations. Hand it over to Taylor.
Thanks, Aaron. I'm going to wrap it up by talking about our pending disturbance-based rapid wetland assessment. Next slide. All right, so what is our disturbance-based rapid wetland assessment? 3 years ago, we reached out to ERDIC and asked in their help and support to develop a rapid disturbance-based wetland evaluation tool. What this tool does is it is a conditional assessment that evaluates immediate and adjacent services associated with one data point. Within one data point or individual radius, which comes out to 0.1 acre or 37.2 meters for one straight, there's the evaluation of invasive plants and disturbances within our first plot. And then within our second plot, we're looking at surrounding land use disturbances that would affect the hydrology, the vegetation of the wetlands. And so this is a screenshot, a flash of the current condition of the wetlands, utilizing the type of vegetation that exists and the active disturbances that are influencing the wetlands. One of the goals of this assessment is that it's rapid and it can be done in 1 hour. And that includes desktop analysis. It was created for small impacts. The intensity of this assessment is commensurate with the level of impacts it should be associated with. And so for EIS, individual level application, this may not be the best tool. However, the intent of this is to provide a quick understanding of the disturbances within this wetland. Ultimately, the goal of this assessment would be to assist in making sensitivity mitigation decisions to ensure that wetlands that are roadside or maybe heavily impacted or disturbed are appropriately compensated for, and the mitigation is appropriate for these types of resources, as opposed to reference natural wetlands, which may carry higher function and therefore require more compensatory mitigation to ensure no net loss. Next slide. This is one of the first times you probably heard about this one because it's been under the hood and been down with our ERDIC office in development. But there will be a rapid involvement with the public, including states, including the respective wetland communities, wetland and stream communities, and so your MAWs, your calls, your NANNers. These wetland groups, it'll be next year though, because we're going to get the final publication at FY27. Right now, we have the final draft we're reviewing, but we expect the final publication of the assessment Q1 next FYI, so October to December. We'll then public notice for comments, questions during that time. We expect to do external training Q2, Q4. So thinking about the January to August stage, we'll be doing training. Ideally ready for use January, maybe before. This is we're still kind of crossing our T's, dotting our I's, and then we expect full integration by next year, and that's completely within our program. That being said, there will be utility potentially for our DOTs and our regular consumers and users that occurred and utilize these types of wetlands, as in the picture here. It's just, we're kind of in a wait and see. But this is when to expect for the further rollout of this rapid disturbance-based conditional assessment. Next slide. And to recap, the gang will be back August 6th to talk about General Condition 23, mitigation, for the Nationwide Permit webinar series. And I think we have our question slide next. So we're open to take any questions, any comments. If you have any questions come up later, please send this to our email. We will get it and respond back quickly. And I'll open it up to questions if we have any. All right, going once, going twice. Again, we'll be back next week. If there's potential questions about compensatory mitigation and then how it ties into these tools and how these tools can help compensatory mitigation proposals, as well as on the back end, how these tools may come into play when we're making compensatory mitigation decisions. And we will have the section chiefs will be available also for some of these other determination questions about compensatory mitigation. That being said, I don't have anything else. I'll turn my camera on in case it drops, and then say bye-bye. And